Hello and welcome back to Homeschool Together. Thanks so much for joining us. We are going through the great time machine. We're going to start way back in our prehistory unit study combo that we're doing with the Blossom and Root and Build Your Library. It's been such a great start. We had a great video we put out talking about why we comboed it, how we comboed it. Today we want to talk about our first section, 2-week period. It took about 2 weeks to do this first combo. This week we actually had a little bit of Build Your Library, a little bit of Blossom and Root. So it was a larger segment, so it took us about 2 weeks. Some segments are only Blossom and Root, so you may find that they take you maybe a week and a half to do. So
yeah, this one included most of the first week of Build Your Library and then the entire first wonder of Blossom and Root.
Yeah,
so
it was a lot of reading and a lot of books.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a great start. This is Big Bang to Precambrian, so 4.6 billion years to 540 million years ago, which was a lot to wrap our heads around.
It's a big chunk of time, about 4 billion years.
Yeah,
we covered it in about 2 weeks.
It's really interesting. I think that this is, when we covered the Around the World journey and we did, different cultures and stuff, we were doing the food, we were watching videos about that, reading some really playful kids' books. There wasn't a lot of real information that our daughter had to understand and really try to puzzle through.
She could just let it kind of wash over her and just grab what she wanted. In this case,
and sometimes there is a little bit of that, but we're finding that we're needing to take things a bit slower with this, and we're needing to read we'll read 1 page of a spine, then we're going to go do something else, and we'll come back to it. Maybe read a page of a spine, go to a video. So if you're used to saying we're doing the Around the World journey, this is definitely a step up in not only complexity, but level of understanding for our kids. Yeah. As we talked about in our first video, this is a 3rd grade curriculum for, it's a science extension unit for Blossom and Root, and the unit study for prehistory with Build Your Library is probably a mid-elementary. So doing this with a 1st grader, we're definitely having to make some adaptations, but that's why we wanted to talk with you all so that you could know, what we did, because I think a lot of people want to do this, go from kindergarten and do this next before you get into ancient civilizations. And so we're hoping that this vlog, I guess, will cover what we did and help give you some ideas of how we made some adaptations.
And actually, you as an educator as well, you're going to have to kind of change how you approach this, because with the Around the World journey, we were able to just read books and read the spines and just kind of have fun and everything. In this case, I'm finding myself having to remind her of the timeline, constantly keep reiterating, what we have covered, where we have come from, where we are now, where everything is in relation to it. It's been a little bit more like what I tend to do with the math and the reading, the phonics curriculums. I'm having to apply a lot of that type of style of teaching and learning and guiding to this curriculum, because it is more of a science-based curriculum rather than just reading a bunch of books and going around the world and watching videos and stuff. And while there's some fun there, and you do want to remind the student where they've come from, I found this one has required more of my time, more of my effort in that sense. So what we wanted to do is go through all the books, all the spines, and some of our own books as well. We're not going to delve into every single one of them. What we're going to do is we're going to pick, going forward, just kind of highlight those spine books along the way. So today we're just going to pick one spine book, talk about what we did with it and why it was so good. We're going to show you all the spines, but then going forward, we're just going to pick one every single week.
Yeah, and we'll highlight that. Now, all the books that you see here, there are some alternates that are recommended in the Blossom and Root curriculum. We're not covering those because those are not part of the freely available sample. All the books that we're going to talk about are part of the sample from Blossom and Root or are shown on the Build Your Library webpage.
Yeah, and then there's a few books that we knew about ahead of time. We had heard about these books, and we'll talk about those. Those might be included as well, but we've known about those as well. So we're going to kind of pick and choose here.
We just want to be respectful of the creators.
Absolutely. So let's dive into Build Your Library first. So one of the first things that you're going to cover in this first week is the idea of fossils, and that's something that we did. So the two ideas, as we did with our Around the World journey, the thing that we like to do is have kind of a focus. And again, I'm trying to just take those two little things that I want her to learn about, my oldest, and focus on the time scale, because that's a huge piece of it. Once you get into the various eras, then you're just chunking along at 50 or 100 million years. That's it's an ungodly amount of time. But the first week, you're covering 4 billion years. And so I had to get her head kind of around that. I don't think she 100% is there, but
I'm 100%
Yeah,
there.
I don't even think I'm there.
It's hard to wrap your brain around that.
Yeah, that little planet going around that sun 100 million times. It's just an amazing thing to think about. So this week we did focus on the time scale and the idea of fossils. So we'll go into the first book. So this is basically the fossils for kids.
Right.
We're not going to go into depth about this one this week, but the fossils for kids.
So these are all the Build Your Library spines.
Yeah,
so this is one.
So that's the lead into it. Then the life story. So this is one of those first efforts of trying to show the timeline.
Get the timeline.
A book that I really like and I can't wait to show you more about is the Usborne Encyclopedia book. This is really useful.
Yeah, this goes from the Big Bang to like modern times. It's buy this book.
Buying this.
We'll put links to everything in the show notes so that you can see them in more detail, and we'll talk about them as we go along.
When the whales walked, when did they walk? We'll find out.
This is a series, When the Whales Walked, When Plants Ruled the World, and When We Became Humans. We own them all, and they're beautiful. Yeah. So we'll show them to you.
Today we were going to talk about focusing on the timeline. How much is $1 million?
Well, I'll van it for you.
You'll van it for it. So basically, this is just a very playful, fun, if you can think about, wrap your head around kind of a Miss Frizzle character, but this is a wizard who's taking a bunch of kids through the time periods, through the ages, through that early history, trying to tell them different types of relations of okay, here's 10 dots, and here's 100,000 dots, here's 1,000,000 dots, and so we're trying to understand time using something that is very tangible. So they stacked children onto the moon, and how could they wrap around the earth a bunch of times? And it really helps because these were very tangible ideas. So as the wizard's telling them, hey, imagine this stacked on top. How far could you reach? If we had all the kids stacked on top, it would reach out to Saturn or Jupiter. I think my daughter kind of understood the scale of the numbers that we were going to talk.
This is a great way to start.
This was a wonderful way to start. I had no idea how I was going to attack this problem.
Right.
I was thinking about beads. I was thinking about sand. I was thinking about a bunch of different ways. This book really helped. This is well worth a buy. Very helpful, not only just for understanding this, the nuance of this time period and what we're trying to do, but also once you get into larger numbers, like in the math curriculum, you can bring this book back in and say, okay, now we're talking about 10,000s and 100,000s and millions. You can see that on the paper, but to understand the size and the scope, again, I think this book has longevity. So if you want to purchase it across multiple disciplines.
Yeah, this is a really great book. I'm really glad that we own this because I think you're right. I think we will come back to it. And this was a really gentle way for a younger child. Our daughter just turned 7. Yeah. So this is a really good way for her to just try to wrap her head around what we're talking about. So great start with this.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun asking her to stack all her friends. Imagine stacking her friends on her shoulders. It was very fun. The Blossom and Root curriculum, we'll talk about the spines now, had about 3 dinosaur books that they recommended.
Right.
So where on earth are dinosaurs?
This is a map-based book. It's beautiful.
Since this has an exclamation point, I have to say it. Dinosaurs! Right?
Yes. This is part of there's a whole exclamation series. There's ocean, dinosaur, animal. They're all beautiful, and we will show them to you soon.
And then the dinosaur book. So you might wonder, it's 3 dinosaur books. They each talk about various different things that you're going to need through the curriculum.
Right. They're all a little bit different.
They're all a little bit, but we're going to focus on the one that I love. This is so far my favorite book. So it's Life, the First 4 Billion Years. And this one's tough because there's actually centerfold pullouts on this.
Yes, I will do my best.
So what it's going to do is go through essentially the first 4 billion years. And here, actually, if you get to the beginning here.
Is this the pullout?
So obviously, in the beginning, the moon was created, or the planet was created, the sun around the sun, and so you have these beautiful, elegant pullouts, and you can actually see the artwork is just superb. Really wonderful reading, great pictures, and if you turn the next page, I think it'll talk about the first ice age. Yes, so when that proto-bacteria started pumping out oxygen, thank you for doing that, created that first ice age, and then there was if I'm right, second ice age, and then the early Cambrian life. So they started talking about Precambrian life here as well. Unbelievably useful book. You're going to be going a couple pages every single week, but this is such a beautiful book. It's so elegant, so big. I love the big format, the beautiful artwork, the fold out pages. It was just very engaging. I just saw my learner just want to get sucked right into it.
What do you think about the age of understanding with this one? Do you think it's a bit high or
definitely high? So it's definitely above that 7-year-old age, and we can get a little bit into maybe next week talking about how I'm having to read some of these books to her younger age. And you might be doing this with a third grader, and that'd be great. I think it would be perfect for a third grader. For my first grader, maybe a little bit above her level, so I'm having to kind of tailor it, or just read a little bit smaller segments, look at some of the images, have a short discussion, come back to the reading. And having to use those techniques to keep her attention span and the focus on the very difficult concepts. And then as I'm reading some of the sections in these books, like especially this one, I'm having to stop myself at the end of a paragraph, ask her a question about what you just read, and engage them, and then continue on. Think, what would you think about, the whole world is covered in ice. What would that look like? She's like, wow, could you imagine like ice a mile high above you? Like just amazing little, fun things. Imagine you and your friends stacked like 1,000 times, and above that is ice, and just doing those type of fun, engaging activities, I think, can get you through a more complex text, and really staying focused on that. So that's been I love this book.
Yeah, so this is our first one to highlight from Blossom and Root.
So good. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the spines that we have. But again, we're not going to show every single one of them because there's only so many. So we're going to go every single week and highlight a different one. Just so keep it light.
Yeah,
keep it loose.
We're keeping it interesting. Keep these videos shorter.
Life Through Time. Ooh, I love this book.
So if you have seen the Street Through Time, City Through Time, Child Through Time, same series, but with dinosaurs. How It Works, Discovering Prehistory, wonderful little short book. Yeah, this is a book that we picked up years ago, and I found it on our shelf, so we're using it.
And because we're DK super fans, DK, are you listening? DK, are you listening?
We love DK.
We love
yes, prehistoric life, and this will be used through the entirety of it. This is a great pickup. I'm glad we got it.
Not just amazing evolution, but an amazing book. Absolutely amazing book.
Yeah, so let's highlight this one because this is actually a spine, and there are others just for this week.
So the issues around the first few weeks that you're going to run into is trying to wrap their head around the idea of evolution, and it's such a complex, difficult thing. Immediately they think tadpoles to frogs. They're thinking everything you went from a trilobite to a shark in one lifetime, and that you got to kind of like break them up, because with evolution you have the double-edged problem. You have the problem of biology and the difficulty of understanding how creatures change slowly over time. Especially this one right here. This is probably the best page. So basically they walked you through these geckos and they talked about selection. This was the great thing. But you have to layer in the timeline. As we talked about, the timeline is the thing that I think it gets missed when you're understanding the evolution. How many millions and millions and millions of years pressure is required. That species has to exist. It has to thrive. It has to not get eaten by all the critters. It has
die of disease.
It has to exist. And then on top of that, there are pressures that are forcing adaptations. And that is something that is really difficult, I think, for a young learner to wrap their head around. But they do it in such a beautiful way here. Yeah. And just in really colorful pictures, very fun. And then eventually, how do you get to a leaf gecko? And I pulled up one of these images, and like my learner's jaw dropped when you see a gecko that has a tail that looks like a leaf, and the body looks like a leaf, and the legs look like a leaf. It was just like a light bulb went off that she's like, wow, it was trying to run away from, critters and predators and all these type of things. And by doing that, it survived. It was able to, change and adapt along a long period of time and become something that is so unique and so different. That got us into a spiral on Birds of Paradise. So all the male birds puffed up and dancing and doing all these funny little things for the ladies. She was just blown away at how these critters would do that. And so they talked about all the various aspects of mate selection and all this. We're only about 10 or 15 pages into this right now, but it was a wonderful idea of like, okay, how did that life come? Because at the end of this week, you're going to just begin to talk about fossils, about the idea of fossils, that there were early critters running around on the planet, and how did they get there? So you gotta kind of like say, well, okay, there's all these chemicals, and they kind of put together, and they started to copy each other, and then they became single-celled creatures, and all of a sudden it's like glazed eyes. It's really difficult to explain these concepts to young kids. I thought this book did a really good job at doing that.
So the reason that we chose this, you might be saying like, well, you have all these different books about life and how life is evolving and changing from period to period. And this is true. This book, though, however, only part of it goes era by era and how things changed. most of the book is about understanding what you're talking about, the overall principles around evolution and adaptation and the pressure and the timeline. And it's all that other stuff. And we didn't feel that any of the other books that are called out in the curriculum cover evolution as well as this one does. Because this has that as its focus without all of the other things that are happening during those eras. This is the focus of this book.
It's the images, it's the like as you saw the pictures in there.
Yeah.
Really, really liked how they did that. And it was, I think, at her level that she could see all the, just the drawings and the artwork. It's really at her level, and she really, I think, grokked it. There's some books that are a little bit more elevated, and it was a little bit more difficult for her to understand. But I thought this got, across a very difficult subject to her, and I think she understands it. Okay,
I think this is one we will probably buy. We just got it from our library right now because I wanted to see what it was like. But once I opened it, I thought, wow, no other book is covering this topic with so much, in-depth, well-rounded coverage as this book does.
Because when we were talking about Precambrian time period, we're talking about early, very proto creatures being, and almost every one of these spine books tried to touch that first spark, that first, whatever protein became a virus, became a bacteria, it became a little bit larger, multicellular organisms. Now we have like protoplants and creatures. That is such a difficult subject because I think it's very hard for even scientists to like noodle down and figure out which one what it was. I thought this did a great job.
Yeah, this is a shining book. I think that definitely we recommend a purchase on this
Absolutely.
one. And since we started talking about evolution this very first week, Grandmother Fish is a book that I've heard quite a bit about over the years. And I thought, we got to get this one for this week. And it ended up being a real hit.
A big time hit. We read this book, I think, 3 or 4 times. And it paired well with the Amazing Evolution book. So basically, it's just a story that is tailored towards the young reader.
This is like perfect for first grade, right?
Things that they can do and how that started with a fish. So here, for example, she could wiggle and swim fast. Can you wiggle? And then so she can wiggle. And so as you're moving through,
our 3-year-old really likes this.
She really likes this one too. And then it goes from the grandmother fish to the grandmother reptile, or the grandmother fish. Grandmother reptile. And so it starts to show you the idea of the branching and the trees and how everything's interrelated. Then it goes from reptile, I think. Then it goes to, I think, the mammal. Yeah, the mammal, and then the grandmother ape, and then the grandmother human. And all along the way, each one of these critters could do something different. And I think what's cool about it is that at the end, it's showing the continuity that you as a human can do all these other things that all those other critters could do.
Right.
And it shows the continuity or the natural conservatism of certain type of traits and features that animals carry forward. While they may deviate and change, we have a lot of interrelations, and those interrelations are seen through the tree and how those traits conserve through time. And it's really, really cool. It was such a great idea for her to get in such a playful, fun, enjoyable way.
This is definitely a must get.
Must get.
Whichever week, obviously, you can start talking about evolution at whatever stage. You don't have to do this in your first week. If it's not available at your library right now, it's all checked out. Add it in whenever you can, because you really shouldn't miss this one. This is a great book.
Don't miss it. It's such a playful, fun book. Another book, Fossil Detective.
We wanted to show this book because we owned this. We already had it. As I said, we had the Discovering Prehistory. We just grabbed it. This one we had, and it's not good. So
it's just dry.
It's boring. And so we wanted to show it to you because if you end up seeing it on a shelf and you're thrifting or something and you're like, hey, that's a book about fossils. We're going to do prehistory. Don't buy this one.
I found that the other books covered the same topics in a little bit more enjoyable way.
So this is, Fossil Detective by Joyce Pope. We didn't like it, and we want you to know, so you can be on the lookout to not buy that.
Absolutely. Now, those are all the books, all the spines. We're going to cover more of them in depth. We'll show you more pictures of them as we move through, so you guys can see and experience, all those spine books that are recommended. We want to talk a little bit about the Eon videos. So these are recommended in the Blossom and Root curriculum. These are fantastic.
There's like maybe 10 to 15
every
per week
so far.
And they're all under 10 minutes. Some of them are like 4 minutes, 6 minutes, 8 minutes. I mean, they're all pretty short.
You can pick one a day and just run through them all. What's great is I think she lists the PBS link in the document.
Right.
But
be careful.
But they're also all available on YouTube on the
right.
PBS channel. So if you find the PBS Eons channel, they're all there for you.
Yeah. So if you have YouTube Premium like we do, and you don't want to watch ads, because they're all available for free on PBS as well.
Yep.
But you're gonna have to watch an ad, and it really kind of stinks to watch like a 1-minute ad to then see a 4-minute video, and there's 10 of them, so you're gonna be like watching a bunch of ads. So YouTube.
If you have YouTube Premium like we do,
or I think YouTube will even only do ads like every couple.
So
or
something like
I don't know. Watch them on YouTube. They're still from PBS Eons. They still get the revenue. So.
I don't even know what YouTube's doing with ads because I haven't seen ads on YouTube for years. Get YouTube Premium. It makes your life a lot easier.
Really great. It's our best thing. So yes, when I planned this all in Notion, and we'll talk more about that like later.
Notion.
But I went ahead and added all the YouTube links for all of these, and I'm like 6 weeks into planning. I've yet to find one that's not on the PBS Eons YouTube channel. So I think you can find
this isn't planning the curriculum. This is like the detail planning to make my life easier.
Right. So he can look it up on his phone and
She's just
cast it to the screen.
It's like oiling the gears. Real oil. I'm just a big machine. And I just need to be I get a little slow. Give me some oil.
I feel like it's like Wizard of Oz.
I am.
But they are great videos. We highly recommend them. They're nice and short. So what you've been doing is you'll read one book or a couple pages. Hey, let's watch an Eons video. Yeah. And we'll go back and read another page.
It's a guy and a gal. It's like my daughter's now calling them the science guy and the science girl, and they talk about the old creatures, and it's just very funny. We start to like endear ourselves to the character. The people on the show. It's just very funny. It's very silly.
So activities this week are all about fossils because that's something that tangible we can do something with. So we looked up a recipe online to do our own salt dough fossils.
So basically, it's like a Play-Doh that it's going to kind of air dry.
Yeah, everyone's done salt dough, right? Yeah. It's like, our kids kept going like, can we eat it? No, you can't eat it.
You don't want to eat that, kid.
So we took the leaves from outside because they've started falling off the trees, and we were able to press that into the salt dough. Yep. We took some of our little dinosaur
characters.
We have
some
like
trace
little figurines.
Fossils, had them press it in as a regular fossil. Yeah, it's just
we had them like steps through the fossils.
Ton of fun. It was a ton of fun. So
we had a really good time with it.
Just showing them, the idea of how the fossils were made and why we know about those creatures then is because of the fossil records now that we were able to dig up. And the funny thing is, a lot of the fossils that we were talking about, the Cambrian time, come up from Canada, actually, central in the Rockies area there. A lot of these Precambrian fossils are there, and I think there's another set, I think, in Australia as well. So it was cool to be able to connect something so close to us.
It was really cool. They really enjoyed it. And so for this week, we did the first few days of Build Your Library, the first week of Build Your Library, and then we did Wonder One for Blossom and Root. Yep. That's kind of how we put them together. Yep. As I've said in the first video, if you want us to share our schedule, you can send me proofs of purchase, and I will do that.
So we're on to the
Devonian and Silurian?
No. It's the Cambrian time. We were the Precambrian. Now we're going to go
Cambrian and Silurian.
No, just the Cambrian.
Just Cambrian?
Just Cambrian.
Stay tuned for the next video. We'll tell you where we're going.
And we'll continue to mispronounce these names.
Sorry.